fictitious meeting for today. Good morning, church. Can you hear okay in this one? Can you? When you are okay, let it rip. Be really loud. The other one. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me just talking like this? Much better if I talk like this? Oh, all right, Michael. My good friend Michael. It'll work out. Fine. Okay. Can you tell me your last name again? Good morning again. Can you hear okay in this one? You can. How about you back there? You can hear okay? Just so? Good morning. Like that? Okay. Good morning. We begin. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church in Providence, where we love beyond belief. As always, wherever you find yourself on life's journey, whatever faiths you have found and lost, whatever you wear, whomever you love, find hope and inspiration with us. You are welcome here, welcome home. This is an important Sunday. It's the Sunday preceding National Coming Out Day, and we are welcoming a guest singer to help us celebrate that day, and the LGBTQA plus and all the letters Soul Circle is also going to help us acknowledge this day. I'm looking forward to it. Plug in. Let's get ready. It is so good to be together, my friends. This is the day we've been given. Let us live well into it.
Good morning. My name is Annie Bissett, and I'm your worship associate today. Please join me in reciting the words for our chalice lighting, which are found in your order of service. This light burns also in our hearts, and it lights our path toward harmony, justice, and hope for all. We also light our sabbatical chalice and take a moment to silently send our thoughts and our care to our senior minister, Reverend Liz, while she's away for reflection and renewal. Know that she too kindles a chalice each Sunday morning and takes a moment to send her thoughts and care here to all of us. May this sabbatical be fruitful for us all, and may our reunion be a joyful fulfillment.
For our invocation, this quote, "Find out who you are and be that person." Those words are from Ellen DeGeneres, and we use them today to invoke the holy because there is no more sacred task than doing just that, finding out who you are and becoming the person you were meant to be. I hope you can see coming out isn't just for the gays. While we're becoming and coming out, as some of us will, let us also do what you know we do really well. Let's stand and greet one another. While you're coming back to your seats, say hello to everybody at home. And you're welcome to stay standing as you will and sing our first hymn on the blue insert in your order of service. Now, this is the time, purple insert. Rainbow colored insert? This is the time for you all to let your hair down and rock out. You'll see. Here we go.
So, congregation, apparently everybody but me already knows this song. Completely new to me, but anyway, we're going to ask you to sing the chorus, which is what's on your paper. And David and Kristen are going to help us with the verse. They're going to sing. If you know the verse and you want to sing with them, you go right ahead, because apparently a lot of you know this song. I look at it and go, huh? But you all, so feel free to sing along if you know it. Otherwise, we'll just let them do it, and we'll just keep doing this chorus. So, to be sure you know the chorus, I'm going to lead you in it. For now, this is like a rehearsal. Okay? Stu's going to help us. 1, 2, ready, sing. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. Can you do it again? I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. Okay, so you know this song. Great, good. So we're going to start at the beginning, just like that, and then we're going to do the verse. So don't be freaked out if you don't know that part. I don't know that part, but you do. 2, 3, go. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show.
Let's unite our voices in a slightly different way as we unite our intentions in reciting the covenant of First Unitarian Church, which is also found in your order of service. We, the members of the First Unitarian Church of Providence, with respect for the worth and dignity of each person, with wonder at the light we know by many names, and with gratitude for our deep connection to each other and to the larger web of existence, covenant to walk together in our search for truth, seeking the paths of wisdom, compassion, and justice.
In lieu of a reading this morning, we're going to hear about coming out, as it were, from a representative of the bisexual, lesbian, and gay communities, as it were, beginning with Steve.
Nope. Be careful. Good morning, I'm Stephen McCloy. My coming out story, I'm afraid, is really bland and boring. There are people in our community whose coming out has led them to be estranged from their families, thrown out of the house, cut off from inheritance, and one man I know whose father hasn't spoken to him for 5 years. I don't have that kind of drama to tell you. I lived for 70-some years as a hetero or bisexual man. I argued vigorously that there was no such thing as bisexual. I could even cite studies, since refuted, to support my position. I married. I had children. My children had children. I divorced. Did my sexual orientation play a role in the divorce? I don't think so. My wife divorced me. She would be in a better position to answer that question, but she's not here, so I can say whatever I want. I rather think that I was personally distant and not emotionally available, and that our marriage had stopped serving either of us. I lived a bachelor life for 10 years. I dated, I enjoyed a full social life. I quelled whatever sexual urgings I had. It did not matter whether toward a he or a she. And then I came out. The laborious process for me was in coming out to me. I think that it took 60 years. It took recognizing the absurdity of our binary world, a binary worldview that may be comforting to many people, but look around. Look at the beauty and complexity of nuance, of spectrum, of a gradation of human sexual longing and fulfillment. I recognize that I could not accept the binary notion for myself. How could I expect the rest of the world to fit into that? After that epiphany, the rest was really easy. I told myself, I told each of my children individually, I told my former wife. Her only comment was, I wish you'd done this sooner. From her perspective, she was right. From mine, well, I did it when I was able. Then I told the world, the words I am a queer man got easier and easier. The recognition of when those words were not necessary also was easy. There is sharing and there is oversharing. Now I know that this is not the story that most of the LGBTQIA+ community can tell. Were I 18 instead of 78, the telling would be harder and I think a lot more fraught. As I have mixed more into the gay community, I have talked to dozens of men who chose to go into the priesthood, the ministry, various orders and brotherhoods, rather than reveal who they were. I have met many like me who married and had children and came out to face the hatred of their families, their co-workers, their co-religionists, and many, many who cannot come out. They have to deny their own being, their own human reality, and in some jurisdictions still face death for being who they are. Remember, homosexuality as a capital crime was reversed in the UK less than 20 years ago. I am deeply fearful of a Supreme Court and its justices who proudly plot to reverse same-sex marriages in the same way that they have now reversed a woman's right to control her own body. I know that being free is not just being able to walk in a pride parade or being part of a welcoming congregation. I know that not only can I not go back, but also that I must continue to work. There is work to be done to welcome to our table our sisters and our brothers and people of other pronouns. Let's understand them, and let's do it.
Good morning. So, one thing you should know about me, if you don't already, is that I've never been all that concerned with what other people think about me. I was never a girl who wanted the latest fashions or the best accessories, and I always chalked it up to some form of Yankee frugality, that if I didn't have it, I probably didn't need it. When my friends in middle school started hankering after clothes and hairstyles, this was the 80s, after all, that would help them get noticed by boys, I was fairly unimpressed. I think I passed as a good girl in my wealthy Connecticut town. I was focused on schoolwork, sports, and friends, and I just didn't have time for boys. Throughout school, I did have a boyfriend who always wanted more from me, both physically and emotionally, than I was willing to give him. But he lived in another town, and we didn't see each other much, and that suited me just fine. We wrote each other letters and saw each other on weekends during the school year and more in the summers. He was very convenient because he would always be my date for a dance if I needed one. When it came time to choose a college, all the rest of the graduates from my fancy girls' school were looking forward to meeting the men at their co-ed colleges. I chose a women's college, and despite all of the totally legit reasons to choose it, it has a tremendous track record of producing formidable women leaders. Most of my compatriots assumed I was either heading to some sort of nunnery or that I must be a lesbian. I did not disabuse anybody of either assumption. But I knew in my heart I wasn't headed for the convent. My first girlfriend called me sometime the spring of my sophomore year. She was so nervous and confessed to needing to summon her courage to call, but please, would I like to go out to dinner with her? I then called my best friend from high school and I told her, I'm not sure, but I think I have a date on Saturday. My friend was excited for me, and we hashed out the intrigue of whether it was in fact a date and what I should wear and say and do. My friend was unconditionally supportive of this new development. When I came out to my parents 5 years later, they were not. After I graduated from college, I took a 2-year contract teaching English in southern Taiwan and spent some time backpacking on my way home. At some point, while musing what I was planning to do next, I told my parents that I was on the fence, but I was considering teaching since I'd had a good experience in Taiwan. My mother exploded in exasperation and told me that that was not a viable choice because she knew I was a lesbian and that I could never get a job, and even if I did, I would get fired as soon as anybody found out. My father piled on and told me he pitied me and considered me handicapped. I feel as sorry for you as I would if you told me you had gone blind, were his exact words. This confrontation was the first time that I knew that they knew that I was gay. It was not the last confrontation by any means, and it is a long story, but it culminated with me being banished from their house. I stayed in my brother's apartment in Chicago until I could make a new plan. This breakup, which I came to refer to as a divorce, was devastating. It was during this period that I very briefly considered killing myself. I came to understand that all of my accomplishments, talents and charms could be rendered worthless simply by revealing one small aspect of my identity. I was a young adult with a degree and many resources in the form of friends who would become my family, and I snapped out of my suicidal ideation pretty quickly. It took a decade for me to repair the relationship with my parents. And this all happened 30 years ago, and from this far remove, I find it striking that even I, who was pretty secure in myself, who wasn't trying to fit in and didn't really care about other people's opinions, could still suffer so greatly at this kind of rejection. Things have changed a lot in our society, but coming out still leaves people vulnerable to rejection. And I know firsthand how much rejection hurts. We can never understand how much support a person needs, even in a more liberal climate, even with supportive friends and community around them.
My life was a series of coming out events, which is typical and happens to many of us in the LGBTQ community. I never actually came out to my father, though. We had the sort of relationship where I kept things vague, so I didn't have to explain too much. This worked out fine when I moved here to America when I was 23. I was far enough away that it was easy to keep any conversations focused on topics like my job, traveling, news about people in our old village, and so on. I had been living here about 3 years when I met Roger. A year later, he proposed to me, and I happily agreed. Around the same time, my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. I had not managed to travel back to Ireland since moving here, so I felt I needed to make a visit sooner rather than later. I booked my flight, and Roger agreed to come with me, and I promised to show him all about where I came from. As the time of our trip drew close, my father was taken to hospital as he suffered some complications. I was worried about how to introduce Roger to my father and how that would go, but I didn't mention much to him on the flight. Upon landing, we headed for the hospital and made it there in good time. My father was awake and he was happy to see us. I said, "Dad, this is Roger," and just left it at that, my mind racing with what to say or do next. At that moment, the doctor knocked on the door and asked if I could step out for a private conversation. I was so relieved that I bolted from the room. I only spoke to the doctor for about 5 minutes, but then I had the brilliant idea of letting Roger break the ice. So I didn't go back in for another 15 minutes. By the time I got back in, they were chatting away, and I thought I had dodged the bullet. The next few days were spent visiting my dad in the mornings, and then Roger and I would head out as I showed him some of the countryside and the sights. During the hospital visits, my father and I talked. It was good, but strange. I told him how I was looking forward to buying my own home, and he was happy. He was released from the hospital the day before we flew back, and we spent a nice evening at home. The next morning, we packed up, and I was in some emotional unease. We'd said our goodbyes, and then he hugged me, which was so unusual for him. I hugged him back, but could say nothing as I had a lump in my throat. I took our stuff out to the car, and Roger followed me out several minutes later after saying his goodbyes. As we pulled away, I was not to know then that that would be the last time I would speak to him in person. On the flight back, Roger was very quiet, but after about an hour, he pulled an envelope out of his pocket and gave it to me. He said my father had given it to him and told him to give it to me when we were on the plane. I opened it, and inside was a note from my father wishing me luck on my house search with Roger, and a large check for a deposit. Roger told me that my father had given him the envelope when they said goodbye, hugged him, and said, "Take care of my son." He explained to him that he had opened a bank account for me the day I was born and added to it faithfully each month, knowing that someday I would settle down and build my own life. After meeting Roger, my dad said he knew it would be with him, and so he had wanted to help us get started on our own. He passed away about 6 weeks after we got home, and I never overtly talked about Roger and me to him, even though I knew he was good with us. I felt like I had come out in my own way to him that was comfortable for both me and Dad. And that's okay.
Jonathan Wesley Oliver Jr. Somebody told me you would be here. Finally get to say goodbye. Jonathan Jr., how many years have gone between us? On the back porch, making wishes you thinking? Once you said something good can come from anything. Jonathan Wesley Oliver Jr. from 54 to 87. What's it like, John? What's in heaven? Are there shooting stars?
I have always, ever since the first time I stepped into this building, felt the potential for being held here. And I just really feel it today. And this piece that we do now, where we hear the joys and the sorrows of the people of this congregation, is just feels really strong today. So we have this book that sits in the back, and people are invited each Sunday to write joys or sorrows that they would like to share, and light a candle. A candle of remembrance for Bob Kilmarks, who died September 6th at age 94 and was a friend of First Unitarian. And a candle of concern for Armenia, whose border is being attacked by Azerbaijan. These unprovoked attacks on a sovereign nation are happening when the eyes of the world are focused elsewhere. May there be peace for all.
Let us gather our hearts and minds in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Before we begin, let me remind you that if you have lost someone in this past year or so, when we share the moment of silence, please do stand with us or raise your hand to hold them in silent tribute. I'm going to ask you to bring yourselves present to the moment by letting yourselves relax. Feel your bodies sitting in the pew. Feel your knees relaxing, your spine and your neck relaxing, your shoulders dropping. You may close your eyes if you're comfortable. Please take a deep, slow breath with me. And again. One more. This is, I know I can go on. Though days be dark with storms and burdens weigh my heart, Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. When sorrow heals my soul and burdens make me strong, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. My sibling in my heart, my kindred in my song, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. So, brothers, take my hand, and sisters, sing my song. When hope awaits at every turn, I know we can go on. Amen. Friends, if you would find your teal hymnals in the racks, maybe share if there's not enough. Ask you to turn to 1019, something of a LGBTQ anthem these days that was penned by the UU minister, the Reverend Fred Small. Please rise as you're willing and able to sing 1019, Everything Possible.
Sorry,
I still wonder if I would have passed or failed the gay test. God knows I prayed I'd pass it day and night. Now, you probably have a similar memory, but for me, the setting was 7th grade. You know, when you leave the comforts of grade school and childhood because now you're a teenager and must start a new year in a new place with all new people, right at the exact same time all of your hormones are kicking in and kicking your butt. I more or less made my debut in gym class. Remember how we all had to wear those matching shorts and shirts, the little blue ones for boys, and other items for boys? Of course, you hoped you didn't stand out in your brother's faded old hand-me-down gym shorts. And you all but tried to melt into the floor when it came to taking those communal showers together with all those boys. Yikes. But that was not the worst of it. It was football season. So the whole class was brought outside onto the field to play football. Now, mind you, I did not and still do not know the very first thing about football. So when someone said, "You stand here and block," I had no idea what to expect. You see it coming, don't you? Suddenly, a pack of larger boys plowed onto me, toppling me over and crushing me. What do you suppose I did next? Let me just say that when homeroom rolled around a little while later and all the kids were playing the gay test, oh, by the way, back then, the gay test was that you, usually a boy, held your arm up and out like this, while someone, usually a girl, would take her long nails and scratch off your skin till you turned bloody. The leading theory was that if you pulled away, you were gay. Later in life, the test would change, but things like whether or not you liked sports or Barbra Streisand and so on factored in. Anyway, you can imagine all these pubescent boys doing their damnedest to take the gay test and take the disfigurement, for the sake of science and all. Funny thing is, I was a pretty determined kid, and I might have held out the longest. But after the gym class, I wasn't even asked to take the gay test. Oh, would it be that I were the one doing the testing? From then on, things were just sort of assumed. I never really had to come out. A little while later, without being prompted, my mother simply told me one night that when I was ready to start dating, I should be sure the boys treated me right. Open the car door and things like that. Later still, my very liberal father took me to live with him because my older brother got into a fight with some kid who called me a fag. He didn't disapprove of me, he said. He just didn't want me to bring shame on my family. So, what was a slight, not too sporty boy who did like Streisand and Cher, what was he meant to do? Like any teenager I know, I did the tried and true thing. I rebelled by dating girls and then fathering a child in my teens. Now, when I started the sermon, I was going to say that I don't have a coming out story, that I always seemed instead to be a part of other people's coming out stories, like John's. But I guess I've thought better of it since, because the thing is, we all have to come out sooner or later. I told you, coming out is not just for the gays. Every boy or girl, everyone has to leave the often isolating and dark times of teenage angst and announce who they are. We all have to come out sooner or later. That is our spiritual imperative, to figure out who we're meant to be and go about the business of becoming that. The only question is, who and what is deemed acceptable depends on who is doing the measuring. That was clearly not me back then, anyway. And it stayed like that for a lot of my life. Probably until we all saw the brutal killing of Matthew Shepard. He became our martyr. And thank God for all the rising advocates that have stepped us for those of us queer as folk since then. But the work is not finished. Will and grace aside, glee aside, the work is not finished. That's why we have welcoming congregations and national coming out days, and that's why they are important. Yes, it's true, LGBTQ plus people now have marriage equality, yay, thanks to all of you. But we are still the only marginalized people for whom it is legal to discriminate against. I wonder if any of you remember the It Gets Better campaign. The gist was many celebrities, some gay, put out messages responding to teen suicide, telling gay kids that things would get better once they made it through adolescence or once they got out of high school. Only for 15-year-old Jamie Rodemeyer, that message came too late. After too many beatdowns and too much bullying, Jamie posted a message on YouTube to Lady Gaga, identifying with her song, Born This Way. I'm beautiful in my own way because God makes no mistakes. I'm on the right track, baby. I was born this way. Thanking her for being an ally to boys like him, Jamie hanged himself on video. This prompted a huge public awakening of the issue gay teens faced, which in turn prompted the establishment of high school gay-straight alliances and new health class presentations. I was an intern minister at the Bedford UU Church when this happened. things weren't easy, even as a UU. The highly homophobic Westboro Baptist Church showed up. Do you remember them? They were the ones that carried posters around that said, "God hates fags," and burned flags in the streets. For the second time, I was never so proud to be a UU as I was when the entire Bedford congregation lined the drive to the high school on both sides with their backs turned toward the protesters while chanting, "This is no place for hate. This is no place for hate." So the kids would not have to witness the hurtful slings and arrows sent to them for having a GSA. We did good work back then. Now I want to tell you about the first time I was very proud of Unitarian Universalism. Richard Cordero was a good and dear friend. We had known each other for several years, and we shared many hijinks and hilarious moments. Richard loved to laugh, and so did I. He was an entertainer, or as he'd say in full flourish, "I'm the greatest living female impersonator." And when he'd finished dressing in the finest couture you've ever seen, just like in a famous movie, he'd utter his line in full deep and throaty throttle. "Now remember, Roger, I'm the pretty one." And for sure, we both agreed he made a much better looking girl than he did a boy. But I knew him best as a boy. Stripped of all the glitter and the wigs, the makeup, I was one of the few who knew the real him. I was aware of his fears, of how terrified he was that his family might discover that he was gay, of how mortified he was at the thought of his parents finding out about the clothes he wore to work, which he kept stashed in the trunk of his car. They would disown me and throw me out. I knew how very afraid Richard was of things like that, of sickness and of death too. These were the 1980s after all. His last coherent words to me were a very teary and fear-filled, "Roger, I don't want to die." "I know, Richard, I'm with you." I've had many years to reflect on the last days of Richard's life. But for me, he died alone. No one could believe how quickly it all ended. He visited the doctor, not at all one of his favorite things, because he was feeling tired all the time and he had this lingering cough. The shock and panic from his diagnosis ripped through everyone. It was severe and sudden. He didn't just have HIV, he had full-blown AIDS, and he passed into dementia and then death in less than 5 weeks. Developed a lesion on his brain that was literally eating a hole in his head and in my soul. It is good that it went so quick. No time for questions or complicated coming out. As you'd imagine, his life and his parents' lives were instantly and irrevocably changed by this secret now revealed. His parents were in so very much pain and disbelief about all they had just learned about their son and all that they had to face. They were so shocked and shamed. They just shut down and closed themselves off, and I mean literally closed all the shades and windows in their house and left them that way for 15 years. For his parents, Richard had become not their son who was sick, but a deep embarrassment. He had become the lost boy for whom there'd be no funeral, no acknowledgement of his passing, no obituary, no phone calls, please. There was no acknowledging any of the pain for his parents or for me. There was no sharing our sorrow, no coming together in comfort, no reconciliation, no forgiveness, no peace. I grieved a lot and for a long time over Richard's death. I missed his friendship. It took me a while to adjust to life without all his antics. Sure, that was true for his parents, too. I'm sure they never quite recovered from that loss. I think it's more tragic than Richard's death, though, that his parents shut themselves away from the world, living in permanent darkness. I've seen a few families lose a child to extreme illness, and often they do amazing things like become volunteers at hospice, maybe start marches or fundraising. But Richard's parents couldn't do any of that. They stayed frozen in fear and pain and shame. They stayed in the same dark closet that Richard lived in. Today, I like to think I understand their choice. It is by no means easy to give life the shape of justice in the face of devastation. In my own sadness and need to make sense of things, I took a different path. Wanting something good to come from this, I became one of the very first caregivers for the then newly formed Rhode Island Project AIDS. By way of a somewhat controversial training, after all, people were terrified of this disease. A training that took place in this very room. Just after that, with the support of the Reverend Tom Alburn, Richard's friends and I got to have a memorial service, giving me the chance to say goodbye. My friends, there are too many people living too many nights alone in the darkness of closets and secrecy and shame, just longing for the light of a breaking morning. Whoever you are, coming out matters. Whoever you are, standing up and being counted matters, because becoming who you are matters. It matters here, I know that. this church is no place for hate. We Unitarian Universalists have long shined a big, bright beacon of light that has brought many people out. So, brothers, take my hand, and sisters, sing my song, because by my measurement, everything is possible. And my prayer is still that we all pass the gay test. Amen.
First Unitarian is a spiritual community who supports ourselves through our own collective generosity. Our annual pledges provide most of the financial support for the mission of this church. And in addition to pledges, any additional dollars put in the collection plate help sustain the good work of First U, both here and in the wider community. We also now offer the opportunity to text your gift. Just text First U Prov and any dollar amount to 73256. First U Prov 73256. For all that you give, for all that you do, for all that you are, we thank you. Before we close today, I have a few invitations. First of all, the Neighborhood Social Justice Committee meeting that was scheduled for today is postponed due to illness. The first session of the newest Path to Membership class is this Tuesday, October 11 at 6:30 next door in the Parish House. There are 3 sessions led by Membership Coordinator Jen Nardone and featuring other special guests. You can meet other newcomers, learn about First U and about Universalist Unitarianism, and hear more about how to get involved. There's a sign-up sheet in the Newcomers Cafe, and if you fill it out, Jen will contact you on Tuesday morning. We're delighted, speaking of the building next door, we're delighted that many of our after-worship activities have resumed. Share fellowship, browse the bookstore, join one of the meeting groups, and of course, buy coffee. The Alliance coffee sales are back as of today. There are several varieties of gourmet organic coffees, and all proceeds benefit charities which serve women and children. Stop by the Alliance table, and you'll also be able to find out about this year's programs. And for all the rest, be sure to read the First U Times, which is sent every Friday afternoon.
My friends, the benediction, the good word is this. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. Amen. Be well.